Hello. Thank you for joining me once again. I am reading The Children of the Law of One and the Lost Teachings of Atlantis by Jon Peniel. I'm really enjoying this book and I really hope that you are too. This book contains so many good spiritual teachings. It gives different perspectives and awareness. It talks about separate self, selfishness, the separate consciousness, subconsciousness, and so on and so forth. It talks about our origins, meditation techniques, as well as energy. It talks about energy techniques as well. So I do recommend this book, Children of the Law of One and the Lost Teachings of Atlantis by Jon Peniel. We are on chapter 9. Sit back and enjoy. We're talking about the separate self. Chapter 9, the separate self. We have already covered part of these teachings in other chapters, but even though some of the writings in this chapter is just a bit redundant, it offers a great deal more clarification and other information from the ancient Atlantean teachings. In hot water, it was my second year, and I had developed a deep bond with my teacher, Zaim. But at this point in my evolution and learning, he could still really shake me up and throw me for a loop when he wanted to, which he did from time to time as part of the process of helping me change and grow. Obviously, he decided I needed to consider changing something about myself or understanding something I was not really getting. Because one day he stopped me on the way to the hot pool and said quite sternly and loudly, in his intensity mode, "Have you ever asked this about your life or the world in general? Why so much suffering and destruction?" I was just on my way to the... He had that intense fire in his eyes. I hesitated for a moment, trying to think of what to say or do. Then I decided I better just simply answer his question. I struggled past being stunned for a moment so I could actually think about his question before I answered. We just stood there a while. He waited for my answer. Then it finally came out after a few seconds that seemed like years. "Yes, of course I have, Father. I asked it often, even when I was young, and it always perplexed me. Then one day I guess I just sort of gave up, thinking there was nothing I could do about it anyway. Accurately identifying the problem is the first step towards finding any solution. So what's the problem? The separate self is the problem." Then he walked off as if he just only said, "Top of the morning to you," as we passed in the streets of Dublin. Later that day, I stalked him. I waited until he was on the way to the pool himself. And then, when the time was perfect, I pounced. I stopped him and asked, "So," I said, "what's the problem?" "No problem." "No? You said the separate self is the problem." "Yes." "Well, you can't just say that to me and leave it at that." "Yes, I can." "But why did you do that? Why did you say it that way and just leave me hanging? Is there a problem with me?" "Certainly." "Well?" "Okay, you think you got me tagged. You're it. Now, we'll get back. We'll get you back. First, go to the library. Ask Gabriel for the English translation book from the tablets of Amelius. Pick it up in front of him, hold it in your hand, and let it fall open where it may. Read the pages it falls open to. Then do the same with the book of Zoroaster and Zend. Then the same with the translations of the book of the scrolls of the Old Testament of the Bible. Then the same with the scrolls of the Quran and unalterated New Testament. Read the pages each falls to. Then also read the following texts. He went on to give me my reading list for what looked like a month. Here are some of the most significant highlights. The spiritual self came to be as the one divided within itself. Created then were infinite multiplicities of the one, still one with the one. Consciousness of oneness remained. Separate self-consciousness came to be as the separate self moved deeper into the matter of earth. Vibration fell into density and fragmentation, with polarization into male and female. The opposites repelled. The positive lost receptivity. The receptive turned from the positive. Polarity misdirected. The flow waned chaotic. Severed in consciousness from the one, the way was lost. The separate self only has life in separation. Separation is an illusion that the separate self works to maintain. The monkey mind serves to keep away the stillness that reveals the light of truth and oneness. In the illusion of separateness from the one, Ahura Mazda, the separate self believes and behaves in a way that are not harmonious in the flow of the one. Such disharmony causes suffering, both for the separate self and others. The separate self turned within instead of without, began the way of take instead of give. Thus was the birth of selfishness. Then came to be the selfish separate self, the master of selfishness, the dawn of darkness. Selfishness, the root of all evil, all ignorance, all wrongs, all pain and suffering. Greed, hate, jealousy, envy, vanity, and lust, call thee each by thy true name, selfishness. Theft, brutality, war, and famine exist not without selfishness. The selfish separate self is a creation of our own design. It disdains love, shuns the light, fears the truth. The selfish separate self lives against the one. It lives in light, L-I-E-L-T, survives only in illusion. It lives only to serve itself and its masters, the darkness and the lords of darkness. It relishes ignorance. With its self-centered gaze, it is blind. The selfish separate self is insane, terrified of death, yet it often accelerates its demise, wants to avoid suffering, yet it often creates it, wants to fulfill its every desire, yet it often prevents their attainment. It suffocates itself with its own blind taking and destroys its own source of life. The selfish separate self controls the mind and twists the truth. It can avoid God by searching for God. It can avoid love by looking for love. Your selfish separate self is the most terrible demon you will ever see. Transcend its grip, and you will be free. Your selfish separate self will frighten you. When you look in the eye, greet it with true love, and it will die. From the ashes of the grave, like the sun, it will rise. Born anew, separate no longer, to serve your true self and the will of the One. As a servant, its proper place, it finds peace and happiness. Thusly do the great enemies become allies as one. The one becomes two, the two become three. The two beget four and begins the more. Within and without, torn between and against, mirrors on all sides, split inside and out, again and again. Thus is the ignorant self. To be whole again, to be home again, only the weary learn, only the bleeding heart returns. To be whole with the One again is the great goal. The great mountain we can climb with our will. For those who take power over their selfish separate self will return and be wholly one. The holy ones use the power of love, sacrifice their selfish separate self, and make to give. Thusly did they find their spiritual self again. Thusly do they forever walk. With the peace of the whole, and in their wholeness, are a blessing to all. What's the problem? Zion could not have made his point any clearer had he beaten me over the head with the text from one of the ancient copper or stone tablets. But I still sensed he was trying to get me to realize something else I hadn't gotten yet, with all these teachings about the separate self. I thought I had gotten it, but maybe I just really hadn't gotten it. I just felt like I was in hot water, and I didn't know why, and it wasn't the pleasant hot water of the pool. I went to the entrance of his chambers and stood there for a moment, timidly. I was afraid, unjustifiably, of course, but I never knew that until the end. So I was still afraid of what I didn't even know. Finally, I knocked and waited what I had created in my mind as the dreaded answer and opening the door of the door. His soulmate, Myra, answered the door. Myra answered the door. He's expecting you, Peniel. He'll just be a moment. I'll come back and get you when he's ready. I can go and come back later. I crossed my fingers in my mind that she would agree. Thank you. But no, that won't be necessary. It will just be a moment. Yeah, a moment during a root canal. Just a moment. Myra was beautiful, inside and out. A sweet, gentle, caring woman. She was in constant great pain from a cancerous tumor that she had growing in her before she came to the monastery. Yet she was always still so sweet and kind. Years went by, and then the door opened again, and she waved me into the room as she left for the kitchen. Zain's chambers were like a scene from Arabian Nights or something. It always put me on the edge of having past life memories somehow. There were embroidered silk brocades and chiffons artfully draped throughout the room, covering the walls and hangings from the ceiling also. It wasn't that it was opulent, really. They were all natural fibers, traded for cheaply and easily placed with anyone with a good interior decorator's sense from 600 BC. But it felt so opulent anyway. Sitting pillows were everywhere, and a half a dozen sleeping mats lined the wall. He had a single chair, which he usually only sat in when formally teaching or lecturing. Today, he was sitting in his chair. How is she doing? I asked, inquiring about Myra's cancer. Fine. She's been eating nothing but mangoes for about 3 weeks now, and does not like the sight of them anymore. But it will cure her cancer along with the energy work we are doing. I was quite nervous and tried to say something important. We were fortunate to have our own trees. It is not fortune. Don't you realize they are here for a reason? Oh boy, stupid thing to say, I thought to myself. I shifted from that blooper quickly and tried to recover the fumbling by just going on as if nothing was said. She seemed in good spirits. I couldn't stand it any longer and had to get blunt. Father, what is the problem? With me, I mean. Why are you having me read all these texts on the separate self? Because you need to. Well, I understand that, but I think I get the point. You have a huge ego, Peniel. You think you are humble. You think you have it all. You think you have inner peace. You think you are kind and unviolating to others. But in reality, you lack it all. You think you get to the point, but you don't really. I was nailed to the wall by his words. I didn't know what to say, think, or do. It was very upsetting, to say the least, to think that I was not what I thought I had always been, and that I had not accomplished what I thought I did. As my mind spun, he went on. Not that a big ego is bad. It is actually good in a way. It just needs to be in the service of God. The bigger the ego, the more power a true teacher has to help others. You will someday be initiated, become an adept, and again be the great teacher you have been in the past, with the great power that accompanies that. But only after you harness your ego and it serves God and not your selfish separate self. Look at the world. It is a reflection of this problem in you. in everyone, the selfish, separate self. We could be living in paradise, a beautiful, harmonious world of peace, happiness, and creativity. And you could be happy and full of these feelings of peace and harmony. But there is obviously a problem, a serious problem, in the world and in you. Maybe you can realize it easier inside yourself if you see it better in a world perspective first. I just managed a nod. Consider the condition of the world, past and present. Humankind has invented amazing things. Is that not so? Nod. But in the past, they didn't have the technology we have today. They simply weren't able to commit those kinds of mass destructions that modern means allow. Now we can destroy the people and ecology of an entire planet. The barbaric ancestors of some humans would have done the same thing had they gotten the chance. Even with the crude means, they still did atrocious things on grand scales, including genocides of entire races. Witnessed the inquisitions that burned hundreds of thousands alive after being tortured, not to mention vicious wars and enslavement of entire countries. And look at what is happening right now. I finally relaxed and began listening and hearing. He was right as usual, including about how humans today are basically not much different from their ancestors, even though they think they are. There was that think again that he was referring to me about. All the violence, destruction, and inhumanity had just gone more underground, become more controlled and media controlled. I thought to myself, not long ago, my father fought in World War II when Hitler waged his mass destruction and cruel genocide. It was big news. It was over and gone, right? That kind of thing isn't going on in the world anymore, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. Zayn was right. Similar atrocities are still occurring, but they are virtually ignored by all the countries and societies of the world. Can you imagine having a 9-month-old baby cut out of your womb by a soldier's filthy bayonet because they didn't want your race to continue? People all over the world are still being routinely suppressed in virtual slavery. The major powers of the world are undergoing economic and social disintegration. Crime and hatred are actually on the rise and grow daily. And if you think torture is passé or hasn't kept up with technology, just check with Amnesty International. Like Zayn said, modern humankind has the unique capability of total annihilation. Advanced weapons of all kinds, including biological, chemical, nuclear, and particle beam devices, allow war to be waged on a scale that dwarfs anything in the past, and have the capability to destroy much more than just human life. It could destroy most life on Earth. And he was right. They have never developed a weapon that went unused. But warfare directed at other people is not the only means humans now have to achieve total annihilation. Humans have waged a sort of war on animals also, wiping out entire species for direct profit, or as a side effect of other ventures. They have waged war on nature also, wiping out great forests, killing oceans and the creatures there, creating holes in the atmosphere, and ultimately forcing the extinction of species at an incredible rate. I think the last time I heard it was something like 180 species per day, depending on the statistics you use. The imbalances created by humans have affected everything on Earth. Now, new mutant diseases are on the loose. Climate changes are beginning to alter the environment with floods and droughts that will soon cause famine as weather makes growing food difficult to impossible. Scientists have now discovered that many animals, including some fish, are being born neither male or female. That means that this will be the last generation for many species. Human male sperm count is down 40% since World War II. How long before humans will not be able to reproduce either? Many people live in denial of these harsh realities of the world because of their fear. And because of that fear, they have embraced unrealistic spiritual beliefs such as if you don't think bad things or believe they can happen, you won't empower them, thus they won't happen. Thought can affect things, but if that were true, how do you explain a baby getting sick from getting into something poisonous under a kitchen sink? The baby has no thought or beliefs about it one way or the other. And even if an adult isn't around, it will get sick and can die. Something to think about. But I am getting off the story, even though it is a related and important point. So let's go back in time again and get back to me sweating in Zain's chamber. I was still wondering and thinking to myself, but what did this have to do with me? I wasn't contributing to any of these atrocities. I spoke up somewhat in my own defense. Of course, I agree with you, Father, but what is the problem with me? I would never do such things. All of these wide-scale, disastrous imbalances and harms are not coming from the way of life of dolphins, bears, insects, snakes, etc. Only humans are so out of touch with nature of things. Now that humans have the ability to end all life as we know it, they are doing so, even to the extent that it will cause their own extinction. A bit extreme, don't you think? A bit blind. Why would normally non-suicidal people act this way? You are human, are you not, Peniel? I live in a human body, Father. Yes, but you still are. It still controls you. Humans didn't need to be the creatures. Humans didn't need to be the creators of all these problems that plague the earth. So why have they been? Why do they continue to be? Why do they behave in a way so extreme that they will even cause their own extinctions? Is money the problem? Is greed the problem? Is hate the problem? Is jealousy the problem? Well, yes, but you initially answered yes. So then answer it also. What causes hate, greed, and jealousy, etc.? Such negative and destructive desires and emotion are the virtues of, so to speak, selfishness. And they are caused by having a separate self. The separate self, blind selfishness, is so out of control that it doesn't even consider that it's creating its own demise. But why? What do the teachings of the Atlantean children say about these teachings? How can we change it and stop it? Okay, I'm going to stop there for now and read the second half of chapter 9 of The Lost of the Children of the Law of One and the Lost Teachings of Atlantis by Jon Peniel. I do hope that you're enjoying this book as much as I am. I am very grateful for all those who are taking the time to listen, and I highly encourage everyone to pick this book up for yourself. Okay? Until the next time that we speak, I am very, very grateful for everything, and I wish the best for all of mankind. How's that?